Okay, and we are here. So we figured we'd put that together. Let's hit refresh, because then we can get the actual link up for our end. And what do we got? There we are. And that should give me the direct. And now we are in the chat room. Okay, hopefully everything's going well. About to find out, I guess. Okay, hopefully everything's going well. Don't need that. There, turn the noise off. Good morning, Ange. How are you? Well, you get the gold medal. Figured we'd do things a little differently today. Well, sort of. Okay. I always do my best to find a topic to start with, so I've got something to fall back on. But like I've told people, doesn't matter. Wallet Moth, how are you? As we just told Ange, this gives you the silver medal. Well, thank you so much regarding the show last night. I figured if I give a starting topic, so I've got a place to go back to. But the thing I do like telling people is that, regardless of what I'm talking about, if you've got a question in any field, feel free to ask it. Because the reality is that until people ask questions, I don't know specifically. Well, yeah, I guess I don't know specifically what people desire to know. Sad to say, that's not entirely correct. What the heck did I do? It did not. Right. There we go. Still having trouble writing and typing with my left hand, but it's better than it was. It's a lot more concentration to type than when you've had a stroke than it does beforehand. That's for sure. So, the reality is I got looking at it, and I've been doing things my entire life to try and guide people in how to deal with it. But I got told a while back, by one individual that I seem to use gaming as a way of manifesting, which in all fairness is not actually that far from the truth. Gaming as in playing Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing. Now, what I'm looking for here is one particular character. Not that one. I'm looking for one that's got this is just a box of these little figures that I paint. These guys. But I'm looking for one in specific that actually has the configuration I'm looking for. Because I know he's in here somewhere. At least I believe he's in here somewhere. Because what I do is I take these figures and paint them so that I've got some reference point to help with focusing on writing. There we are. This gentleman right here. I've just added him. This little figure here. I haven't painted him yet, obviously. But I've just added this character with the cloak. The cloak's not quite long enough, but I got to work with what I got. Okay, if I find a better one, I will. The important factor is he's got the right staff. But I've just added him into the Return to Paradise, and he'll be used as one of the figures I'm working with. And what the heck did I just do? I just put him back in the bin. That was brilliant. Oh well. Okay, I gotta ask you one question there, and a lot of times I know a race by a different name than what people know them. But if you can tell me something about the Hathors, I may be able to, and I'm going to make a note of it anyway. But I may already have information on them. That being said, the stroke, like I heal at a staggering rate. I ended up with a stroke on December 28th of 2018 that shut down my ability to speak and my ability to walk. Okay. Heart attacks are painful, but they're a lot easier to recover from. When I had the stroke, I turned around and I went in on the 28th. On the 30th, I was having trouble getting out of bed. Can't imagine why. And clearly, I wasn't speaking well. So I turned around and I'm trying to get out of bed. And the nurse looks at me and she goes, "What are you doing?" I says, "I'm bored. I'm going for a walk." And she goes, "You do know you came in here with a pretty clear stroke." I says, "Your point?" On the 30th, I told the doctor I was going home for New Year's Eve. Or rather, I told the nurse I was going home for New Year's Eve. Right. Now, this is 2 days after not being able to speak, not being able to walk. So she looks at me and she goes, "No, I'm sorry. This is a lot worse than that. You'll be here for probably 4 to 6 weeks minimum before you even start to move properly." So I'm walking around the loop. They put me on a walker, which was pointless considering my left hand didn't work. Right. But I've been on a cane for the majority of my life, as in I've been on a cane since I was 12. So I turned around and I looked at the doctor. I says, "Look, can we put me back on a cane?" And he goes, give me half a moment." "Marilena, good morning. Hope you're doing well." He says, I've got to double check your balance on the cane." So he goes and gets me a cane, hands it to me. I took off on him. He catches up to me and he goes, "Well, you're apparently comfortable with a cane." He says, so we talked a little bit. On the morning of the 31st, on New Year's Eve morning, he gave me the go ahead to go home for the day pass. Right. And he asked if I'd be coming back. I says if I was willing to come back to, as an outpatient. I says, "Yeah, I don't have a problem with it." Right. So from my standpoint, it's only been the last 2 weeks I've been able to start typing with my left hand again. I used to write with my with my left hand, albeit mirror image, but I used to write better than I do with my right. I'm still working on that at this point. Okay. But all in all, the only thing I lost was my ability to block out emotion, because when I was before the stroke, I had no problem blocking out emotion. There was no way you could get a rise out of me to speak of without really working at it, either positive or negative. Okay. So I mean, ultimately the stroke has gone, I've overridden it. I just decided I was not going to let it take me out. What do we got here? Wallet Moth. You said you've had a couple of experiences lately during the day while active. Found myself looking at a person. Next thing I know, I'm driving the vehicle. Then I snap back into myself. Any clue? Couple of possibilities. Okay. The fact that you're walking along and then find yourself in a car rules out the issue of being abducted. Okay. Because they don't put you inside a mobile vehicle if you weren't there to start with. Okay. Yeah. That's the first. What I said half. I don't blame you there, Marilena. I'm a little different than you are. I actually invited a whole pile into one house. It was great. We had we had a satanic cult in the back. Let's see, we had a satanic cult. They were all dead, bear in mind. We had a satanic cult in the back room, a witch's coven in the basement, and we had an orphanage in the attic. It was great. It was never a dull moment. Basically, getting back to you, Wallet Moth. Sorry, got a little sidetracked on myself. I do that a lot. Okay, that answers that question. Okay, now that I know who we're talking about, thank you so much, Marilena. What you likely did, Wallet Moth, was you likely your mind was already set on where you had to go. So when you're there, okay, you're looking at the person. That's the person that you really had to get in touch with. And it just came out, your mind put that image there to remind you to say, look, find this person and deal with whatever the communication line is that's missing. Okay, because when you do, what happens is your mind, when you're really focused on something, when it's really critical, your mind will step in and make it happen. Okay, I don't feel there was anything wrong. It's not a sign of any collapse on your part. It's just an interesting twist of days. Oh, then take a look with that if you can remember what you do with the person that you were following. Okay, write down everything you think that you can, every detail you can remember about what they were wearing, where you were, this sort of thing. It will help you pin down in time who it is, because they're going to be an important person to you. Exactly how, I don't know at this point. Okay, it's just what's happening is the human race is starting to evolve their higher senses. They are starting to develop. And now it's just a question of getting a handle on them. The neat part about it is that the more open your mind is, the more you actually accept the fact it's happening, the easier it becomes to actually understand it. Oh, that's right too. I'm looking at this Wallet Moth, and you're driving. You're in a left-hand drive car. Wait a minute. I was cutting roses. It was a left-hand drive car. I drive on the other side. That is a definitive possibility there, Ange. Although the problem there is, or the hiccup is, screen memories usually take place because of an abduction, and a mobile car is a lot more complicated than a lot of the other images they've got accesses to. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I know my ancestors are from the UK. My grandfather was English, and my mother was Welsh. The neat part about it is, as far as that went, during the War of the Roses, my ancestors were actually on the throne, which, was not our most auspicious time. But I remember, my brother found out about that. And the other thing that I recalled was one of my lifetimes was actually as a druid. And I'll tell you, the druids back then were a lot more potent than people thought. See, that's interesting, Marilena. What Marilena has written here is, it's weird. I've been able to go back into the past and change the outcome for the present. Now, I've never personally run into anybody that could actually accomplish that. Absolutely, you can go to the past, look at what happened, and modify your current behavior to alter what's coming. But I've never run into anybody that could pull that off. Well, that's what I was getting at there, Wallet Moth, is if you weren't driving to start with, it's very, very unusual for an abduction to put you in a mobile vehicle. But the biggest thing that I look at from my standpoint, well, apparently broadcast is paused. I take a look at it. All of the information that comes in, everything everybody experiences, is something that can be put to use. Okay. Now, with that in mind, what I end up doing, and the reason I had the figures out in the first place, the reason I had these figures out in the first place is because when I'm done the show today, I've got a couple of things I've got to get done. Right. But I use these little figures to figure out just exactly what I'm going to be dealing with. How I'm going to write. Because the whole concept of taking control of where your life is, we could go down a real deep rabbit hole on this. See, the problem that I'm looking at here, where it comes from the whole concept of time travel, is you're moving forward, and I haven't drawn this out yet, but every person moves forward in time. Even when you're going backwards, you've got to go forward to go backwards, at which point you're now in your future. Okay, and this is why I said it's a really complicated setup. But if that were to actually happen on a functional base, okay, if it were to happen on a rapid base, can you picture what would happen to all of history? Okay, if people could actually pull that off on a regular basis, the idea that going back and that doing something will drastically affect the way an entire society goes is patently overstated, because we know that if that were the case, then a simple change like somebody killing an ant would alter, geopolitical outcomes. And let's face it, that doesn't happen. People haven't got the message yet. Uh-oh. I gotta ask Wallet Moth. I've heard that before. When what Wallet Moth has written here is I've had a lot of strange things recently. All started when I was watching Keith and he took his glasses off and looked into the camera. I've had people spot things. I had one gentleman. I was at a live event, a live UFO event. Experiencer speak to be specific, back in 2013 or 2014, and a gentleman I was talking to, I took my glasses off, and he nearly fell off the chair because of what he saw. And I'm like, okay, well, this is normal, but the reality is, where it comes to my glasses, I used to have, if I was holding my glasses right there, like just that close, I couldn't physically see my glasses. Okay, now I can spot them across the room. But this is where that issue of self-empowerment comes in. And by the way, it applies to any race, any individual I've come across. It even applies to things like the different plants and animals I've run into. And yes, plants and animals absolutely talk. The reality is, this is what you're witnessing there, Wallet Moth. If I understand it correctly, depending on what you're seeing, and if you care to elaborate on that, that'd be great. It would help answer a couple of questions from my end. The funny part about it for me is a lot of what I do, it comes, I know it comes across as though it's just, well, this is just run of the mill. But we got to understand, when I was born, the day I was born, I remember my birth. And when I mean I remember it, I remember coming down the birth canal. And I'll tell you, if you don't remember if you think birth is a wonderful experience, you don't remember yours. Okay, because I know what it's like. But when I got here, I went, no, I'm done. I'm going home. I was in an incubator. I went, no, I'm just plain going home. So I didn't even bother developing the silver umbilical cord, because the umbilical cord that people talk about is in order to keep your body alive and so you can find it while you're traveling. In my case, I had no interest in going back, so I didn't bother with it. And to this day, I don't use an umbilical cord. Okay, but when that happened, I was told I had a very big job to do and that I wasn't allowed to leave. So I got put back. In the physical sense of the word, okay, the doctors on the life side used a tiny little defibrillator to restart my heart. And the reason I know it was a defibrillator wasn't because I saw it, but I'll tell you, the electric shock is not a fun thing. The funny part about the way life goes. Well, when I came back, the reality was I came back and I'm like, okay, not happy. So it was a complicated setup. Things went fine well enough until the first running I had. I mean, at that point I could now see I could already see the people that had passed away, ghosts and spirits, walking all over the place. Okay. Which I thought was great. So, of course, I started laughing because everybody was looking so confused about people walking right through the wall in front of them. Right. To me, it was just plain normal. But I'll tell you, the dead are quite often really confused about what they're up to, especially if they die in a hurry. It wasn't until a little later, until 20 months later, when I took a fever of 108.4 that lasted 2 weeks, and subsequently flash fried my hypothalamus and my hippocampus. At that point, they diagnosed me mentally retarded, not to mention epileptic. Right. Well, I found a cure. The mentally retarded, they may well have been right. Okay, but I did confuse them by graduating on the honor roll. What I don't understand is why, when I was in grade 8 and I got pulled out all the standard sciences, why, being diagnosed mentally retarded, did they put me into a course in theoretical genetics? Worked out well for me, but it completely screwed up my outlook on the medical society. Of course, that was pretty much butchered when I woke up in the morgue at 5. The thing is, what I came to understand is it doesn't matter what you've been through. Okay. I was actually tested for that, Ange. Ange is just suggesting high functioning Asperger's. And yes, quite frankly, it really is, as far as the gift goes. But I was actually tested for everything in the market. Okay, all the way down from the worst possible down to the best. This was only tested, I guess, about 3 years ago now. Maybe 4. But they were looking to find out what was wrong, because I know I don't think in a standard fashion. It just has never happened that way. But what the shrinks came up with was, and this was a clinic that ran. Correction, the guy ran a trial clinic. He said, and he tested me for everything and says, no, mentally speaking, you're fine. He goes, you do have one heck of a temper when it comes to dealing with people with that you consider stupid. But he says, other than that, he says, you're perfectly fine. I still argue the point. Oh, okay. I mean, I certainly, yeah. Yes, they absolutely can, and I don't even need to go and get that one. Mind you, I spent so long in the my labs. Well, so long. I spent from about a year old to about 5 when they murdered me. I spent in the my labs, and I'll tell you, that is a place you never desire to go. But telepathy, I've had enough evidence of it. I mean, can I sit down and go, "This is what you're thinking"? No, I'm what I call an uncontrolled telepath. Okay. So telepathy knowing can certainly be tested, as can astral travel and remote viewing. There's a lot of things that in today's world can be tested. What I find is a lot of people, and this is why I won't bother with it, but a lot of people will find that it will start looking at that and going, and it's sad, but a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll say, "I've got this ability, therefore I'm better than you are." And the reality is, I'm really not. In my opinion, I am no better than anybody. What I have figured out is how to motivate myself. Okay, I spent the first 56 years of my life as a professional procrastinator. Okay, and a high-level pack rat. Okay, and then things finally dawned. Finally dawned on me. What? Where is it? Now, how the heck did I do that? I've shown people this before. Okay, this funny little sign here. Those 4 words are absolutely, in any language I've come across, they are the 4 most powerful words in combination for rebuilding self-esteem, self-motivation, self-empowerment. You get the picture? Okay. Sad to say, Wallet Moth, I really didn't do anything to you. Okay, what I actually do is I'm simply me. And sometimes that triggers things in people that help them become more of them. What I have found is that people around me, even if they're only remotely gifted, have a tendency of amplifying that. Okay, this may be one of the reasons why I became rather reclusive. Like I don't go very far. I'm at home. I go to one restaurant, and I go to to one specific grocery store when I have to, and the X's, and that's pretty much it. I wonder if you realize just exactly how accurate you are on that. Marilena. Okay. When it was stated that we are all one, that we all come from source, whether you call it source, God, the universe, any number of names, okay, it's all the same thing. And that's one of the things that I ended up dealing with. Yeah, that will absolutely help you. Because the reality is, once you realize you've got control over your life, you're the one in dominant control. Now, this does not make anybody perfect. Okay, I finally figured out that's how it works. Okay, now when I wrote the original storyline to the Yldrbac Chronicles, okay, I had taken a concept and put it all under one roof. Well, I've got 2 of the books out now. I've got 1 more coming in that I'm aiming at for the end of this year. But the one coming out that I'm aiming for at the end of 23 is where it all began. And it's there that I cover a lot of the information on what a soulmate is, what a twin flame is, what a soul family is, and how all that comes about. Okay. Yeah, that's, the reality there, Wallet Moth, looking after me, myself, and I, karmic law says you must be true to you first. Okay, that's the first law. Be true to you, so you must be true to you first. Okay, then There's do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. Those three are all equally important. Those are the only three I bother with. Because if you look at the different laws, okay, no matter where they come from, they all fit inside the same side, the same thing. See, I ran into a problem just a couple of days ago. I had a gentleman contact me. He was looking for money. And the reality is, I'm pretty tapped right now. But the claim he made was that he knows me and we think a lot alike. Well, the sad reality is, he certainly knows me by name. And I've got a lot of people at this point that are starting to know me by name. Okay, a little bit more effectively. I'm wondering, just checking things, because my YouTube feed, the one that I look at, had stopped completely. Okay, now it's working. Now let's bring it up to speed. Anyway, minor sidetrack, technological glitch, it's normal. But the reality is, once you've figured out where you fit and what you've got control over, that's when you can change things. Okay. And the nice part about it is by taking, and this is why I talk about putting a list down to alter it, because self-empowerment boils down to this. Even when you're going through what you're going through there, Wallet Moth, okay, things are changing for you. The world is going to look different. They are changing for virtually everybody. Well, they always do. Okay. And what we're finding happen now is by teaching people how to actually tap into what they're personally capable of controlling, which, by the way, and you've obviously already figured it out. Okay. Some of you have already figured it out. Marilena, you certainly have. That the reality is you cannot control what somebody else is doing. You can't control how they're going to respond. The only thing you've got control over is how you react. Okay. How you react is the way. Kara, welcome aboard. Glad you could join us. You can control how you behave and how you react to somebody else's behavior. But you've got no way of controlling what somebody else does. The neat part about it that I found is that I was trying to tell somebody years ago, okay, I was trying to tell somebody how I felt about them, in a positive way in this case, but I thought I had taken into consideration every option that could come out. I missed the one. I missed the one they reacted to. And this is why I say, whatever you're planning for, realize you probably missed the one that's going to happen. Okay. Because, the majority of people, they work on a bell curve. Okay. But everybody, no matter where you're coming from in life, no matter how you got to where you are, okay, the reality is you're all in exactly the same place. We are all right here, right now. And no matter what you're doing or how much money you've got or how much stuff you've got, you're frankly going to run into a problem. You're going to die, and it's not going to be taken with you. But this gentleman that had approached me, yeah, he wanted money, and he made this neat little comment. He says, I know you really well, and we've got a lot in common. Understand, this same gentleman looks at the world and goes, the elites are the people causing the problem. Okay, religion is causing the problem. And the reality is we are all part of the problem. Okay, so I don't see it his way at all. And the reality is I met him once in the restaurant, in the one restaurant I go to. A little while later, I ran into him again. And he says, well, we met before. I know you. We've got a lot in common. And I looked at him and I went, not to sound rude, but who are you? Right. Which to me pretty much indicates I really didn't know who he was. So the reality of it is this. When the guy asked for money, I'm like, look, and legitimately, I really didn't have it. I'm pretty tapped. I've cut things about as tight as I can get right now. You know, which is one of the reasons why I'm looking at the whole issue. Because, I mean, let's face it, I'm 59 at this point. Okay. But I think this is a mess I made for myself because I've always looked at one individual, the guy that Colonel Sanders, who everybody, most of the people, especially my age, knows is the guy that built Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay, but what I found out was he was 65 when he opened his first stand, and now he's a household name. Well, with this in mind, I figure I've still got another 6 years before I hit that point. Okay, but and that might have been my downfall. Going in 6 years, this is where I should be able to get to. The reality is there shouldn't be anything stopping me from getting to that altogether. Okay, to getting to that now. My shortfall is I don't honestly remember how to market all that well, I don't think. Or maybe it's just a question of I haven't put the functional effort into it. Okay. Yeah, I like that. You're absolutely right, Marilena. Where you say with our thoughts and actions or non-actions, that is the reality of it. People say thinking about doing something is as bad as doing it. And the funny part about that is if that were the case, then this book would be an absolute disaster because that's post-apocalyptic. That came out of my imagination. It's not meant as a forecasting or a foretelling of what's coming. But in that, the world has completely collapsed due to a number of reasons. Okay, and the original storyline that I wrote the book around, I wrote back in when I was 15. Okay, so when you get an idea in your head and you decide this is what I desire to do, now so many people are told you've got to have an idea straight in your head by the time you're 20, you've got to have a good head on your shoulders. Okay. A couple of tricks for you there, Marilena. Okay, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But a couple of tricks for you. Okay, and this is the one. Nope, that's the story I'm working on. Where is... Okay, of course it's going to be missing unless that's it there. Nope. I'm just looking for a sheet of paper, which apparently is not where it belongs, so I probably shoved it off the back end. I don't know where it went. Well, that upsets me. Not much. Okay, I'm over it. On a sheet of paper, literally, take a sheet of paper and you write down, this applies to your finances, regardless of what your finances are. Okay, you literally write down, because we're talking about your household. We have legally acquired a minimum of X dollars by July 31st, 2022 at 1 minute to midnight. Now that X is whatever it costs you to run your household or your business. Okay, when it comes to your household, I always use the term acquired. Because it doesn't matter if you find it, if you're paid, if you're working for it, if the government sends it to you, or a gift. It doesn't matter. As long as it legally comes to you. Okay. As long as it legally comes to you, you mark it in. Now, I've been doing this quite literally. I really seriously started tracking it about 6 months ago. And except for 1 month, I beat the marker every time. And what I do is when I break that barrier, the next month I up my goal. Now, for me personally, I require $2,500 to run I now require about $3,000 to run my household. But that's because I just went and bought myself a new car. So I'm renting it from the car dealership until I can get it paid off. Okay. And you are right while I'm off. This is why I say you focus on the positive, you minimize the negative. And this applies to every aspect of your life. When you're looking at changing the direction your life is running in, Okay, it requires looking at it in present tense because the present is the only, thank you. The present is the only time, I guess I should clarify that. Thank you very much, Ange. The present, right here, right now, is the only time you can ever accomplish anything. And the reason I say that is because even if you postpone things until next week, I'll get started on my exercise next week. Okay. Even if you postpone it that week, when you actually start on that, it's now right here, right now. Now, where it comes to this whole aspect of creating the reality you desire, it's not actually a question of knowing where you desire your life to go. I mean, yes, I would love to be making my primary income from book sales. And to do that, I'm going to have to get a couple of things done. But, I was putting on weight. And I actually went the route of looking at some of these fast little concoctions, these herbalistic concoctions that the newest types of doctors are saying. They're saying this will work, this will take your weight off, right? I love the ones that go cutting down on what you eat and exercising more doesn't work for losing weight. There's another cause, and here's a medication that'll cure it. Newsflash: I tried one of these medications. I tried it for less than a week because at the end of the week, I had a heart attack. And I immediately took a look at this concoction and went, don't need that. Waste of money in one sense, as in I bought the medication and threw it out. And yes, I did dispose of it in the appropriate fashion. I didn't just throw it on the ground behind me. Well, I did. But I ended up taking it down to the pharmacy and going, look, this is what I bought. I want it gone because it caused a heart attack for me. So they did. That absolutely, Marilena, there was a client I had years ago. She got a little carried away with it. Every major item she desired to buy, she would whittle a figure, including a multi-million-dollar property she desired to buy. Okay. Within a year of completing that little carving, she would own the thing. Now, there is no way I'm going to take up major whittling to that degree. I just don't have the desire for it. I mean, it's a great idea, but, my creativity comes in the way of writing. Actually, in all fairness, it gets replicated in the way of writing. But this is why this particular little book, not that one, this one. Okay, that little book, that's the backbone of how I physically changed the way the energy in my world was working. This is why I say when I talk about tools that I offer people, if they apply to my life, I'm using them. Okay, but there is very little on this planet that people cannot do. Okay, I'm a firm believer that as long as you put your mind to it within reason, okay, you can accomplish it. Now, here's the thing. There are certain things that this doesn't work with. I was mentioning this idea earlier that, some people believe that thinking about doing something is as bad as doing it. Well, if that were the case, we would run into some pretty serious problems with some of the, if you take a look at the movies people have. I mean, take a look at the movie 2012. Somebody thought about that. Okay. It changed a whole lot of things. And every time somebody hears something or thinks something, they're changing. Okay. But what we have to realize is we've got control over our own life. The trick to get into making society work more effectively is by literally taking control of that in your own world. Okay, there's a lot of tools that work really well. Where it came to my deciding that weight was an issue and I was no longer content. Okay, I hit 246 last year and went, there is no way I'm breaking 250. Right, so I modified my diet, started eating a little bit more effectively, increased my exercise, which, by the way, here's my exercise routine. Takes about 5 minutes in the morning, and that's it. I spend most of my day sitting at the computer writing or, either writing or, in this case, doing the live feed. In all fairness, I never even considered doing a live feed, or for that matter, speaking in public when I was a kid. Matter of fact, I used to hide from people quite regularly. Turns out I really did that a lot. I did actually write down, I've got and this one is not in print yet. Where is it? Just give me half a second there. Over here. This one here. I have not put this one in print, and don't know if I'm going to at any real point anytime soon. But this little printed book, the only difference in this book that I wrote, and this one's just done, this one I printed out for myself, really. I've got a few copies of it, but this is a channeled autobiography. Okay, and when I say channeled, when I went and wrote that, okay, I was bored at work one day, and I'm sitting in front of the computer, and all of a sudden, at the end of the day shows up. Last couple hours of the day, I was sitting in front of the computer, and when I realized what was going on, the end of the day showed up. I looked at the computer in front of me and went, oh, and there ends my childhood. Well, guess I'm going to have to read that tomorrow. So I put it aside, came back. The next 4 days, the same thing happened. I had more of the book written. Okay. I had more of the book written. I never read any of it. So I put the whole thing aside, right? At the end of the 4th day, by the way, I'd finished it off, and even the cover had been completed, right? The only thing I changed in this book was the bottom here. I put a channeled autobiography. Okay. And that was fine. I was going to read it on Friday. So, on the 5th day. So I went to read it on the 5th day, and the book was gone. It was just completely gone. 4 years later, I was working for another company, and I bought one of my coworkers had a computer that had never been hooked up to the internet, but she was selling it. And I needed a new computer. So I bought it. And I bought the computer from her. But when I opened the thing up, because I was going through to see what was on it, and I found this one publisher file. Okay. And that publisher file was pretty big. So I looked at her. I said, any idea what this is? And she goes, I've never seen it before. I opened the file up, and it turned out that this book was actually on that computer. Okay. So here it is, 4 years later. I'd lost the book altogether. How I got it back, that's one of those neat little things I look at going, well, this is just the way my life works. Okay. So I did print it out, but what it turned around and told me was I thought up until that point that I had actually been, and this was written, I actually did this one probably 20 years ago, 22 years ago now, 23. But anyway, almost a quarter century ago, that one came out. Okay. And what it told me was up until then, I thought everybody had shunned me as a kid. As it turns out, that book flat out said, this is why, you actually pushed everybody else away. So even as a child, I was staying away from people because I never did figure out, and I still haven't, whether I don't get along well with people on the whole. And it's not like I fight with them, but I keep to myself a lot. And I don't know if that is just because I understand the way people think or because I don't. Many of the things going on, and I had to really rein things in and go, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to handle this. Now, I never could piece it together to start with, right? It was only about 3 months ago-ish that I finally got the one thing in my life that I really desired to have. Okay, and that issue was I desired to have peace of mind. Didn't know what that looked like, but I was trying to figure out how I was going to fit into this world. Well, the reality is this. Don't work to fit into it. Okay, really take a look at yourself and go, are you content with you? Once you figure that out, now you start altering the things that you're not content with. And that will bring about a much higher point for you. Okay, where you can now eliminate the negative aspects of your life, the things you're not content with, alter them, alter those. And all you're left with, once you've got the negatives out of the way, all you are left with is the positive aspects of your life, a life that you're content with. Okay. And this whole idea, and that's the whole reality. Okay. Working on yourself, figuring out who you are, what you're content with, that's the key to your success. And the only person in existence, the only entity in existence that can make that happen is you. This is why when you figure out that you're not content with something and with somebody or with something in your life, you can look at how you're responding. Like this t-shirt here that I'm wearing here. Okay, this lass here, Sweet Maria. This is a young lass that I actually support quite readily. Now, I'm not into sports. She, on the other hand, decided when she was a young lass that she desires to get into the MMA. Well, I am really happy for her. She actually sells these now. Okay, and I am really happy for her. She is going down into the States on July 20th to actually compete and to actually make a mark in her world. This is just a representation of the work she has done. Okay, and very happy about it. So again, that's somebody else that has taken a look at their dreams. You likely have dreams of your own that you would like to do. Okay. From your standpoint, the one thing I will tell you, it's unless you're dead, it's not too late to accomplish your dreams, although your time frame may have to be adjusted. Okay. For instance, if you desired to be a millionaire by the time you were 20, if you're over 20, you're not going to be a millionaire by the time you're 20. But you can still make the millionaire thing. Okay. The last place I thought I was going to ever be is standing in front of a bunch of people talking about the way my life has shifted and how I went about that. And the way I went about it was this. Okay. When I was growing up, we always recited a poem. Okay. And I only ever remembered one line in it. Can't is a word that is foe to ambition. Okay, I was taught very clearly. Okay, I remember very clearly taking that word and that one phrase, and I took it to heart. Okay, I remember as a kid we had a barbecue, and my mom asked, right at the end of dinner, mom asked, "Well, what am I going to do with this dozen of hot dogs?" And I looked at her and I said, "I'll eat them." She goes, "You can't do that. You can't." She says, "You can't eat them." Well, I misunderstood what she meant because I took her literally and just totally ignored it. And about an hour later, she looks at me and she goes, "What happened to the hot dogs?" She goes, and I says, "Well, I ate them." She says, "I told you can't." I says, "You were wrong." And that is the way my life has been, the entirety of it. Okay. But it comes from understanding one aspect. And that is you set your own limitations within reason. I still strongly recommend, that when you turn around, okay, and you go to look at the laws, follow the laws of the land in which you are. Because I'll tell you, whether you like the law, I personally am very against myself. I will wear a seatbelt. I do not agree with it, but it is the law, so I absolutely wear it. And the answer to your question that nobody's asking at this point, the reason I do not agree with it as a law is twofold. One, my brother would have been dead if he'd have been wearing a seatbelt at the time that when he was a tiny kid. If Mom had been wearing a seatbelt, she'd have never hauled him out of the way. And yeah, I agree with you, Ange. Can't is a great excuse. I actually did a video. I did a video earlier. If you look up language, okay, in the videos, I did one on can't and why it is so debilitating. I've actually identified nine out of 12 words. I know there's 12. I've identified 9 that are self-debilitating. I've only done 4 videos on them, and I really should get to the other ones. But you can convince yourself you cannot do things. And, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, one way or the other, you're likely to be right. Okay, but greetings, JCL. Glad you made it. The catch is you've got to use your common sense while you're doing it. People take a look at it I haven't been able to do this or I can't do that. Here's the thing. A doctor can tell you, you've got to stop what you're doing. You've got to stop. For instance, I just use this as an obvious example. You've got to stop smoking or you're going to get cancer. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter how much logic is there. Until you get that emotional imperative here, you're not likely to accommodate what you're doing. Now, absolutely what you're aiming for. Absolutely, you can borrow somebody else's conviction. Okay. Utilize their conviction long enough to develop your own. It does work. Okay, but what I came to the understanding of is helping people accept the fact that and that they're not the only one going through this, and that won't make you feel any better, by the way. If you're not content with it, if people come to realize other people have survived this situation, it sometimes helps them go, okay, I can make it through it. Okay. I understand that all too well, Ange. That was actually what caused my first stroke, was bottling what I was doing, what I was feeling about putting everything else first. I mean, I literally put everybody else first. Never told people what I was feeling, never told people what I was thinking. Net result, I bottled it all. It caused a hiccup in my life. Do not have a stroke if you've got any way around it. And yes, they can be diffused before they happen. Okay. The catch is to recognize them. Now, I've already had the disadvantage of having one, or maybe it was an advantage. Okay. But about a week ago now, I nearly had another one. Okay. And it boiled down to, I took a look at the fact that I was on the verge of a stroke and went, not going to happen. I am not letting this occur. My blood pressure was 192 over 93. My pulse sitting at 104, and I was soaking my bed with sweat. Sorry, it was 102. Okay. And net result is I looked at that and went, I am not having another stroke. This is not going to work. Okay. So I shut the stroke down in mid-stride. By the following morning, I was fine. And since then, my blood pressure has been normal. Okay. This is stuff that can be done. Okay. But it boils down to you have to really get in your own heart that you are capable of making it happen within reason. Okay. There are things that people can do. I mean, there are stupid things people do regularly. And this is why, if you want to see a site you want to see a website that is sadly funny. Okay, it's called the Darwin Awards. The DarwinAwards.com. And what it does, it tells you, it shows you people that have done something absolutely stupid and ended up dying because of it. Okay, one of the obvious examples, or getting hurt in some other fashion. One of the most obvious examples, and this was just absolutely insane. Way back when I was a kid, it was normal. If you ran out of gas, you'd siphon it out of another tank that you owned. If you're siphoning out of somebody else's, that's illegal. Out of your own, there's no problem with. But this one guy, he wanted to siphon, and he showed up on the site a number of years back, and what he did was he was checking to illegally siphoning gas. Okay, now his method of siphoning would have been fine. And no, I'm not going into that. Where he made the stupid move was he opened the gas tank and then used a lighter to see if there was gas in the gas tank. Now, needless to say, he did not end up getting any of the gas out of the car. Actually, technically he did. The car blew up. Okay, but this is just one of those stupid things that, yeah, you might be able to survive it, but I don't recommend it. Okay, I mean, I've seen a lot of strange things in my life. I can quote all kinds of examples. I've got in excess of 80,000 clients I've dealt with over the years. The one key factor is, first and foremost, you've got to decide that you're not content with the way your life is. You've got to decide that the path you're on is not the path you desire, that you're feeling really completely involved in. Okay. You've got to come to the conclusion that you yourself are worth the effort. Okay. I took the whole concept of you're supposed to be doing this, and threw it out the window. Okay. Now that is excluding the legal side. Okay. When a law says this is what you're supposed to do, then absolutely, because I don't know about you, but I can't handle the fine levels. And I'm certainly not interested in the vertical bar scene. But one of the biggest things that you have to realize is that when you get your mindset, I love this, and Andrew's saying here, I live my life to the fullest, but I know I'm capable of more. I have full faith in God and the universe to guide me where I need to be. Okay. And there's a couple of things there. Even though I do not, and I have not gone to church I haven't gone to what people call a church in, 1977. So it's been, 35 years now? Maybe a little longer? No, 45. It's been 45 years at least since I've set foot inside a church, except for when I got married. Okay, and yeah, I'm divorced. Although if I get my way and, my other half can get across the border, then I will end up married a second time. But I haven't been inside a church in 45 years, aside from that one event. Okay, but here's the neat, actually come to think of it, we weren't in the church there either. We got married by a JP. But I am still an extremely firm believer in both God and Christ. Okay, and no, I'm not going to go off on that side of it right now. I could, but that would raise a lot of objectionable notice, and I'm just not interested in the conflict. Okay, but the reality of it is that you have the ability in your own world to make your life what you desire it to be. Okay, doesn't matter what it was. I talked to a lot of people that have gone, I started writing a book, but I was told it wasn't good enough to publish. There are approximately 7.6 billion people on this planet. Okay, and they've all got varied tastes and varied likes. Okay, good morning, YJ. Glad you could make it. While I'm off, things can get complicated, but here's the funny part. They're actually all real simple. Any change you desire to make is very easy. Okay, isn't painful. We're taught to fear change, but change is the one consistency in the universe. It's the one consistency in existence. Now, can you complicate things? Certainly. Okay, the most brilliant people, what they do is they take the simplest concept and go, I'm going to complicate it so it's difficult for other people to do. Okay, I'd look at it the other way. How do we break this down to make it easier? Okay, I've walked into businesses, into people's lives and gone, you desire this to change. Here's how you do it. Now, do understand, I know how to straighten all this mess out behind me. I absolutely do. Okay. Problem is, it doesn't bother me too much. Okay. I am slowly getting things out of the way. Like, one of the biggest things that I'm having to do is I've got just the same amount of clutter on my computer with a whole pile of redundant files that I'm still trying to sort through and get rid of the ones I don't require. Okay. Oh, speaking of which, a couple of things now. People have asked me in the past about the races of the world. Okay. These are just a couple of the pictures that are going into the second printing. Okay. This is what my artist is doing for the races of the world. Okay, that's actually, and well, obviously you can read it. That's a Muldock. Okay, that is the character. That's the race that, as near as I can figure, is what the Predator was based on. Okay, now if you've got a copy of The Birth of the Wolf Pack, or a copy of that, or a copy of Race of the Worlds, okay, that's your chameleons. Reptilian, yes. Okay. And they are not, these guys are, chameleons are like 7.5 feet tall sort of thing. Okay. And, I've got a number of pictures already done that are going into the races of the world. I think I've only got 10 left now before I put the second printing out. And if you happen to have a copy of it, and that's this book here. If you've already got a copy of this, absolutely, when I announce that the second printing is out, absolutely drop me a line. Because a commitment that I made to myself was that when the second printing comes out, when the second printing comes out, I'm going to be including the pictures in it, as well as a little extra information. Okay, but the people that already have bought the book, I'm just sending them a copy if they want one. Okay, it's just that simple. Oh, I just noticed here, YJ's done a recent did a recent update, or looked up the recent update on the world population. We are now at 7.9 billion, 7.996. So let's face it, we're pretty close to 8 billion people. Now, here's the thing. People talk about about having a challenge, about having this challenge of, okay, maybe we should try one thought at a time. What do you think? People talk about having a shortage of food, a shortage of baby formula, a shortage of land, and a shortage of all sorts of other things. And yet, there are countries that are turning around and going, we are going to absolutely force an increase in unnecessary children. In children that we're not able to deal with in the first place. Right? If you live in any country and you can fly over top of it, Canada or the United States are prime examples. We're running out of land. No. Take a look. If you ever drive anywhere, if you ever fly anywhere, there is a staggering amount of land still available. 50,000 years ago, we had over 10 billion people living here. Okay, all living in peace. And I kid you not, there was no war, there was no greed, there was no anger. They just didn't exist. It was a cooperative society. Okay, from that standpoint, can we do that again? The answer is absolutely yes. But it's got to be done by showing people, both in word and action, how to treat each other in a positive fashion, to minimize the negative, to maximize the positive. I mean, I take a look at the internet where people are going, here's pictures that these celebrities would not want you to see. Take a look at them. Ask yourself, if you're one of these people that is doing anything from reposting it or posting it in the first place, you're part of the problem. Self-empowerment does not mean walk on people and make them feel worse. It means help them stand up. Okay, if you've got the capacity. Now, I've been asked many times why it is I deal with any race, any nationality, any income bracket the same way. It's because I don't see people as being different. I really don't understand how people can look at it different. Because let's face it, back in ancient Egypt, we had this neat little thing. Okay. And that reminds me, I do have to look at that. I was supposed to make a note of that. And where are we? And I forget who asked. I'm not even certain if they're in the room at this point. But I will look into that and see if I've what I've got. Here's what I'm going to do. I obviously didn't get to that, and I've got to take a look at it. But I'm going to be looking into to see what I can about the Hathors. Okay. Like I've told people, I do not know everything. I'm not the only source of information out there. Okay. But many of the races that are out there, many of the races I know by a different name. Much like you call Earth, Earth. Okay. I call Earth Esau. That was her name that she told me. Absolutely. Now, the thing is, YJ, that people will judge people. Okay. Everything we do in life is based on personal observation. Everything that is said is based on personal opinion. Okay, that's just the reality. Oh, not an overlander Wallimoth, an off-worlder. Aliens I split into two groups. Okay. An off-worlder is a race that evolved off Earth and has come to visit us, or has come and is interacting on Earth, but they originated on another planet. Okay. The secondary race is the secondary qualification is ancient races, and those are non-humans that evolved on Earth. Okay, and I'll show you one that. Give me 5 seconds here. Just got to walk over to my collection. Okay, there. This is where reality and fantasy really come to a head. Okay, now if you take a look at that, let's see if I can get it up in the light. Okay, that is by mythological standpoint. Okay, mythological standpoint, that's a minotaur. Okay, also known as a Gron. Okay, and yes, I've got those in the Races of the Worlds. Okay. See, and now what people don't, and the one caution there, YJ, is justice is what what you've said is justice what many conflate in a negative context with justice. Quite often, yeah. Many times people call it justice when what they're actually looking for is revenge. That's the biggest challenge that people run into. Okay. Justice does not necessarily mean punishment. Okay. It means literally you put the energy out, let the energy come back to the person. But do not take it on yourself as that person upset me. Therefore, I'm going to retaliate. Okay. Hammurabi's law does not work that well. As in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Okay. And YJ, you're absolutely correct. Many of what people call mythological beings or mythological encounters are things that really happened or are people that are really alive. And this was the one thing I did with the Yldrbac Chronicles and with the Races of the Worlds. These are all different things that I've personally gone through. Well, correction. With books 10 through 12, I have not personally gone through what I've seen there. what I'm writing there. Because thankfully, society has not collapsed yet. However, on its current path, with the way people are separating into different little little groups, it is getting worse. Okay, the sad part of it is self-empowerment boils down to going, okay, I'm okay with me. I'm still not entirely content with my current weight. I hit a point and now I'm bouncing back and forth by a couple of pounds. I haven't broken that 200-pound mark yet. Okay. From my standpoint, it really boils down to an issue of well, and you're basically right, YJ. Where it comes to the computers, I'm technologically challenged. I have my main computer is here. It's a laptop, but that laptop, I've got one monitor here that I've actually got the current view of what you're seeing. This is why I keep looking sideways. Okay, because that's the YouTube channel that you're seeing. Then up here, I've got one monitor and another monitor over here. I've actually got the capacity. Well, I've got the capacity. I don't have the room for it to put another monitor in place. Not that I'm aware of yet, but I'll figure it out. I would love to have, if I had the setup, I would probably have another couple of monitors on here because I'm in the process of writing 31 different books at the same time. Okay, now in the late last year, December of last year, I cut it down to 32. And then just last week, I've cut it down to 31. Because, where is the thing? Just looking for one other book I've got. And, of course, it's not right there. I wrote a children's book called Mr. Dreamcatcher. Okay. I wrote it, the second volume of it, Mr. Dreamcatcher Returns, is in the printer right now. I should have it back sometime this coming week. It may already have been completed. YJ, sadly, it's sad to say, my ex-wife used to complain about that. I'd be talking on the phone to somebody. I would have my computer up and running, and I would have 4 or 5 different conversations via text on the go at the same time on multiple different conversations, multiple different topics. When I'm working on my writing, when I'm actually working on writing, I will be writing what I am in the novels or in the self-help books or in the reference manuals, doesn't matter, sometimes all of them, and carrying on a full conversation with somebody else while I'm doing it. Okay. This is why when people tell me they multitask, I look at them and go, how can you possibly call that multitasking? Many people really do switch between topics very quickly. For me, I operate them all at the same time. Okay, this is why I can do that. It's also why I have trouble explaining some things. Thank you so much for joining us there, Wallet Moth. You have a great day. The nice part about it is once you realize that the world is at your fingertips, you may require assistance, you may require guidance, but you always, always, always talk to somebody who has done it successfully before you. This can save you a lot of hassles. And this is one of the primary reasons why I finally got around, to going, I'm going to start putting this information out because I found I've been working in the consulting field since I was 10, professionally since I was 23, as in generating an income. But I found I was repeating myself so often. How do you change your life? How do you get it working? Okay. And that's why I wrote Believe in Yourself and Follow Your Dreams, was I took the backbone of how I actually managed to turn that around. To the point where I used to be one paycheck away from living on the street. I finally came to the conclusion I could do better. I deserved better. Net result, I now have, right now, I've got sitting in the bank enough that I've actually got, if I never did a thing for the next 2, maybe 3 months, I've still got enough money to live on. Okay, that's going to change pretty quick at the end of the year. Thanks very much to my eldest brother for putting stuff aside. He unfortunately passed away in March. So sometime within the year, I should get my share of the inheritance, which will take the edge off of everything I'm working on. Okay. And yeah, we very definitely are. YJ says it takes a village. We really are in this together. Now, the nice little part about it is that's way more accurate than you might think. The problem is that society has been taught, number one, to fear everything, and number two, to blame everybody else. Okay. And I'll tell you, every one of the so-called elite, the people that have a lot of money, every one of the politicians is a person first. They are not perfect. They are not infallible. But I really do have to question with some of the people that end up in leadership positions if the saying isn't absolutely bang on the money. The cream is not the only thing that floats. But I don't blame them. I look at the way people are behaving. I look at the way that bosses treat their employees. Okay. That's where the problem is. If you do unto others as you desire them to do unto you, you will get ahead. Okay. You may not get ahead in the way that you're absolutely thinking you should be. But no, fairness should be just gets thrown out the window anyway. Yes, quite often. Because very few people will eat macaroni without having the cheese. And I've only run into one person that would eat the cheese without eating the macaroni. They literally, my older brother I watched do that. And my older brother has passed away, and this might be part of it. Okay. He used to eat the cheese from the macaroni just because he liked the flavor. Okay, it was a really weird setup from my way of thinking. And there are foods out there that people tell me are good for you, that I won't touch. Things like tapioca and yogurt, I'm just not going to eat. I don't deal with the texture well. Mind you, according to my father, I didn't deal with the texture of pablum well either. Now, mashed potatoes and gravy, that on the other hand worked really well. But what I've always looked at, there's a saying that goes, if you point your finger at somebody, look where the other 3 fingers are pointing. Okay. That's where the majority of your responsibility lies, on what you can do. Now, if you take a look at what you're not content with, and you start altering the way that is going, okay, then when you eliminate the things that you're not content with, all you're left with is a world that you're content with. And rest assured, that means your stress level collapses. Okay, and I can't think of a better thing to do with it. Okay, now, what we have to realize is in order to reclaim power over your own life, the first thing you've got to figure out is that you don't have power over your own life, that you've given it away. Now, the one exception to that is if you're living in a home, okay, that somebody else has their name on the lease for, okay, or somebody else has bought it, okay. If you're living in that environment, the person that is sitting at the control seat does have control over certain aspects, but not over whether you're successful. Okay. I will tell you, YJ, I take that word need. I think I did a video on it. Need and want are 2 words that I have almost completely eliminated from my vocabulary because both of them promote a negative response. If you need to do something, then if you need something to get somewhere, then quite frankly, what you're doing, you tell the universe, I need such and such. In logical terms, it makes sense. If you don't have it, you still require it. Problem is, if you use the term need or want, what the energy is that you're putting out is, I desire to experience a lack of this item. Okay, so you ask for a lack, you get a lack of it, and then you sit there going, but I asked for it, I needed it. And that's the complication. Okay, the moment you ask for something, the universe hears you don't have it. But the universe, or God, or source, or whatever you want to call it, okay, the name is really irrelevant. When you go, and you ask for help, what you're actually telling the universe is, please let me experience a lack of assistance. Okay. When you thank the universe for providing for you. Okay. I thank God on a regular basis for the things I've got. I do question the veracity of it. I actually told him flat out one day. He told me what he expected of me, and I went, yeah, not going to happen. Okay. Because he came to me about 2 years ago. He turned around and, he turned around a couple of years ago and he calls me up and he goes, look, you came down here, you agreed that you were going to do this job. And we looked at him and went, true, we did. Okay. But you're not doing it. I says, that is also true. And we're not going to do it. He goes, but this is what we expect. I was talking to both God and Esau at the same time. Esau, you would know as Gaia or Mother Earth. Okay, some of you may call her Mother Nature. Okay, I was talking to the two of them, and they turned around and they said, well, this is what we're expecting. I went, yeah, but I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was you who gave us freedom of choice and free will, irrevocable by anyone, even by you. Is this still the case? And God turns around and says, absolutely. I says, then, much as God may not make mistakes, you might have wanted to think that one through, because I've got the free choice as to whether or not I do what you're asking. So here's what happens. I'm not doing it. I will take care of my two kids, the two that I physically had a hand in bringing in. Okay. I will take care of them. But the rest of this message that you desire me to pass on isn't going to happen unless you bring somebody to me that I can look forward to waking up next to. Okay, aside from my kids. Okay, now understand, this world was originally built for spirits to experience the physical world, the third dimension, in a physical body with a limited set of senses, in a family environment. A family environment is two adults of any gender, any race, under one roof, raising however many people or guiding however many people they choose to guide. Now, God looked at me and he goes, well, that's not what we were expecting. I says, absolutely. But that is what you got. Now, it's the same as the rest of us. You do have freedom of choice. You do have free will. What you don't have is freedom from consequences of what you do. Okay, God has the same limitation. Okay, well, net result was 3 days later, I end up connecting with the one that is currently my other half. Okay, and when we get her across the border, we've been together now for 1.5 years. Okay, coming on 2 years. And we are planning on getting married when she gets across the border. But this was, this is what I desire. This is what I require for me to do what you're asking. 3 days later, I had what I asked for. Okay, and I am happy to say that, over 1.5 years, we have not, granted it's a long distance relationship, but in that 1.5 years, we have not had one argument. Not complaining about that, by the way. Okay. Well, that's the funny thing, YJ. Yes, it's very much like the double helix. Okay, the problem is that the double helix is only part of the equation. The actual helix that the human genome is built on is the triple helix. Okay, That's the one that they've only just started researching. Look into it. The major research centers, especially around the world, but I know of a number of them down in the States that are actually researching the triple helix now. But what they're finding, what they're claiming, is that it's full of a lot of junk DNA. They are, and I know this is going to sound arrogant, but they are wrong. It's not junk DNA. It is simply DNA they don't understand yet. Okay, but you are right as far as the dance between fate and chaos is kind of like the double helix. The other thing that you'll find where it comes to fate and chaos is fate is an illusion. Okay, and here's why I say it is a yes, very much. Fate is an illusion. Fate would say no matter what you do, here's the outcome. Okay, and that's where the illusion is. Okay, because that is not written. Now, if everything you do, if you had fate, then free choice wouldn't exist, because you could go, I desire to go that way, or I desire to go that way. But if they all end up at the same point, then this is a false choice. Okay, you're not getting a different outcome. That's fate. So you can believe in fate, or you can believe in freedom of choice. Freedom of choice says I can go this way and end up over here, or I can go this way and end up over here. Okay, two very different outcomes, but it's up to you whether or not which one you take. And yes, if you take a look at your hand as the life path, okay, you start here at birth. Everything from here, from your elbow, all the way up the forearm to the palm of your hand, this is the past. Okay, that's the only past you've got. Here's the present. This right in the palm of your hand, that's where you can do things. But if you look, you've got all these different fingers to go out. Each one of these is a new path. Okay, and let's face it, there's a lot more choices in your hand than just the 4. Sorry, 5. Hand works a little different, but the principle's the same. Okay, the moment you choose to go down this path, okay, automatically that becomes your present, which means all of this, yes, it's still there, but you can no longer get to these fingers. You've gone down this road, these fingers are no longer an option because you've already gone off track from them. Okay, Carl, welcome aboard. Glad you made it. Once you make a decision, that's when your life changes. But it's up to you to make the decision as to what you're going to do. Okay, this is why when we talk about empowerment, it is not a question of telling people this is what you must do. There are certain things that must happen. Absolutely imperative. If you're going to count from 1 to 10, okay, you've got to go from 1 through 2, 3, etc. to get to 10. You cannot get there if you don't pass through those other numbers. Okay. Now, that's just the reality. That's just one of those neat little things that has to happen. Okay. You do not have to learn to walk before you can run. Okay. I've seen kids. I watched one kid. It was priceless. He had never said a word. He was close to 5 years old. And I was over in a house party. And the parents were really worried because the kid had never he had never said a word. 5 years old, they had talked, everything had been done by signing. Not true sign language, but you get the idea. Right. And I was over there for this party. And this kid, they were having what I grew up knowing as goulash, which boiled down to if it's in the fridge and it's not bad, it goes into the same pot. That was a standard on Friday nights. Okay. And this kid, they put this goulash on the table. And the kid takes one look at it, looks at his mom and goes, "What is this garbage?" Right. Well, everybody just stood in absolute silence. It's like, and the kid goes, or the mom goes, "You spoke." The kid goes, "Of course I spoke. what is this garbage? Right? But you never speak. I never had a reason to. What is this garbage? And I mean, it brought everybody to a standstill, but it just went to show you don't actually have necessarily a child with a learning problem if they're not speaking. More often than not, that is the problem. Okay. I know kids that think so fast that they cannot actually get a sentence out. I spoke to one kid, and the thing was, he had never been taught this. Okay. Or more to the point, people weren't listening to it. In all honesty, YJ, I really don't know. Okay, honestly, I forget whereabouts you're from. But as far as Pam Nicolation is, I do not have a clue whether I know her. I mean, or if with it being Pam, it would have to be her, I'm hoping. Either that or really cruel parents. But this kid was stuttering. Oh, okay. Quite, yeah. See, I understand the Delta November Alpha. That makes it easy. You know, the sad part about it is what we found out was this kid could speak full sentences. I knew a guy that had a problem. He had a severe stutter, and when you're dealing with somebody that stutters, the way to empower them is to simply do not, whatever you do, finish their words for them. Just ask them to slow down. Same thing with a kid that is speaking so fast, they're stumbling over their thought process. Just tell them to slow down and think before speaking. Encourage them to slow it down so their mouth can catch up with their brain. Okay, the kid that I talked to, the one that I knew that has severe stutter, he's the one that pointed out the worst thing you can do to somebody that is stuttering, or for that matter, somebody having math problems or reading problems, is not to answer it for them, is not to make the notes for them. It is to slow things down and encourage them to take it one step at a time. Okay, the reality of it is that when you're dealing with people, society has gotten so rush that people do not, they just don't slow down. They don't notice what's going on. Okay, I saw a post the other day. Some genius was complaining that people were doing the speed limit. If you guys are just going to do the speed limit off the road, well, bad news. The speed limit is designed for that very reason. Okay. Or the ones when, there's lots of things that we can look at from that end. But the issue of self-empowerment is take a look. You take a look at good afternoon, Cloud. Glad you could join us. The neat part about this is you take a look at these, and there are so many times that people are completely missing the point on what's going on. Okay. The funny thing about that variant, that Omicron variant, 1965, 1956, there was a movie came out that was literally titled that. Okay. It was literally titled Omicron, and it was about a major virus. Okay, absolutely, absolutely bizarre. But you take a look at that, quite often. Now, when you look at that, the movie was written. Now, all of a sudden, we've got the Omicron variant. Can we use a little creativity in naming? Now, ironically, when I'm gaming, when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, a former girlfriend of mine pointed it out. I don't use gaming as just an escape. I use it as a way of manifesting. of seeing what I desire to accomplish and finding a way to make that happen. Okay, now, no, I am not sitting down learning how to cast fireballs. I am, on the other hand, reminding myself how to move objects with my mind, how to work with what is colloquially known as telekinesis. Okay, currently not having as much success as I'd like. I can feel it, but I'm not getting the physical response yet. But it's one of those things I am working on. But why am I working on it? Because I know I can do it. And I just desire to prove it to myself. Okay. Am I likely to go on some sort of a talk show and go, oh, look what I can do? Not much of a prayer. Okay. Will I go to talk to events to talk about off-worlders, to talk about self-help, self-motivation, that sort of thing? Absolutely. And yeah, I could get into some conversations that are problematic. Okay, and one of the reasons I don't do it here, because I've got my own views on the way religion works. And rest assured, they are contradictory. Although, years ago, I actually had a show that I hosted on KGRA radio on the internet. And we're talking 6-7 years back now. Well, it'll be longer than that. 2012, about 10 years ago, I think. But I had a show where I brought on a well-placed member of the Roman Catholic Church and a well-placed member of the Church of Satan. Brought them onto the same show. Okay. And the neat part about it was, you'd think that would have been an absolute nightmare show. But what I found was within an hour, I had them actually agreeing with each other. Okay. You know, the neat part, what I found was the Church of Satan and the Roman Catholic Church, what they call the Catholic and the Catholicism, teach almost identically the same thing, with one primary exception. The Catholic Church says magic doesn't exist, but what most people don't realize is the teaching of tarot, as in these funny little cards here. And yeah, I work with them as well. I also, by the way, work with Ouija boards. But these neat little books and cards here. Okay, the Roman Catholic Church will tell you these are evil. But the best trained tarot reader I ever ran into was trained in the Vatican to read those. Okay, so all of these things are interconnected. All I come to do, the only thing, the primary reason I am doing this is to remind people that we are all connected. We are capable of making this a world that is far better than what we've had. But it is up to everybody to do their part. Yeah, see, if we take a look at 65, okay, 6556, okay, I'm going to have to deal with that. That is true. Omicron, and by the way, the Xenon, I believe it is. Let me just double check and make certain I've got, what am I doing? Got that right there. It's easier doing it this way in this case. Go down here and we take a look at, grab that all the way down. X, where are we? Okay, apparently it's not that easy at this distance. Of course, it's going to argue with me. There we are. Yeah, okay. The Xenon, when we talk about Omicron here. Okay, Omicron being that evil entity from the, from the Transformers. Okay, the Xenon don't bother making themselves look human at all. They never even try. Okay, they are a robotic race. Okay, but when you take a look at 65 and 56, now according to your gematria, those are the same number. Okay, the problem is when you take a look at base 12 numerology, And I've seen people talk about base 12 on the net, only they're doing it wrong. Okay, their method does not add up, and I'll go into that on a different day. But 65 using base 12 numerology is actually a number 10. It doesn't break down to 1, it breaks down to a 10. 10 being the number of acceptance. Okay, 56 on the other hand, 56 is 4 and 7 is 11. 56 is understanding. That's where you take what you've already come to accept as real. Now, that's funny, Cloud. That really is. 56 breaks down to an 11, which is also a single digit. Okay, but acceptance means you've already come to understand it. Now you have to accept you've already come to accept it. Now you come to understand what it all really translates into. That's where we go from the acceptance here. You've got that emotional imperative. Now your brain figures out how to make it happen. Now, the reason I said that was comical, Cloud, is Cloud just mentioned the Cloud named their telescope Lucifer. The funny part about Lucifer is this. She was cast out. But you got to remember, the original term cast meant sent. She was sent down to teach humans about the importance of following your word. Because if you think about it, every rendition of Lucifer and Satan is that she will not lie. She will follow a contract. It's like, here's a contract, sign it here. Okay. Now she will use any loophole that is available. Any loophole left in contract, she will capitalize on. That, by the way, is not an evil act. Okay. Because if there's a loophole, if you've overlooked it and she spots it, this is just spotting it. By standard numerology, that would be right. You've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 15, which would be 6. I don't know if I can do this fast enough. 2022 minus 1728. Whoops. 2022 minus 1728 is 294. So we minus 144. Okay. So we have, let's see, 1728 is one cycle. And we minus 2 cycles of that, which is 3 and 6. In base 12 numerology, intriguingly enough, it works out to the same thing, is what it would seem. Because we take the year, which is 2022, subtract 1728 off it, which is one complete cycle of 12 times 12. Well, I think it's called a grand growth. But anyway, 2022 minus 1728 leaves you 294. Minus 288, which is 2 times 144. Okay, so you've got 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 6 is 9. My apologies. 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 6 is 9. Okay, so 9 is a number of discrimination. 6 is a number that's supposed to indicate all sorts of neat little things like community and what have you, which it actually does. But when you look at the number 9, that is the number in base 12 of discrimination, where you get to choose which path you're going to go down. You're going to decide what works for you, what doesn't. Beyond just the original of 2, you've got 2 options. Now you get to understand by looking down those 2 options, you get a better understanding of the path you're on. Kind of fascinating when I think about it, that working with the numerology that I work with, okay, which works out into a number 9, okay, that is discrimination, and that is what today is all about, is making sure that people have the option of looking at what the path they're on is and going, am I content with this path? Okay. And I did not complete that. That's the year is discrimination, but we take that 9 plus 7 for the month plus 2, okay, is an 18, which breaks down into 1 and 6 is 7. 7 is self-empowerment. 7 is self-awareness. Okay, kind of fascinating when you think about it, that when we take a look at the numerology I work with, that it would happen to turn out that today is the day that I'm looking at how do you reclaim power over your life. Well, the trick of the easiest trick in the book is simply start eliminating the things in your life that you're not content with. Okay, ultimately that is the catch to it, but it's up to you. There's a chart that predicts all sorts of things. The funny thing there, Carl, is I have seen way too many times when somebody looking at chart went, somebody's going to die at this point, that I came to understand that the charts don't mean a lot. Okay, and here's why. According to the medical charts, there's charts on how much you should weigh at what size you are and what height you are to be healthy. Well, I'll tell you, at my height, the chart I was looking at says I should only weigh 145 pounds. Now, think of this. Okay, I'm right now just over 200. Picture what I would look like 55 pounds lighter than what I currently am. Okay, granted, I'd lose this, which I wouldn't mind. I'd also lose a little bit of the excess I've got around my waist. Then I've documented, in answer to your question there, Cloud, I have documented, there are 59 that I've documented there. I think just over 100, okay, that I've personally interacted with. The information that is contained in the books that I've got is the information I've personally gained through firsthand, head-on experience. Okay, I don't bother, and this is why I know some of them by different names than what other people know. Okay. But I've got somewhere just over 100 different races as far as I'm aware. I've got 59 in the races of the worlds. And volume 2, I think I've got over 40 already. Okay, I really don't have a definitive answer for as far as absolute concrete numbers. But we just might have added another one. I've got to take a look at what it said about Hathors, because this was something that was asked earlier in the show. And I'm going to have to look up to see what traits they have, because often I find the name I know something by is not the original name. Yeah, I am not the most, shall we say, I'm not the one with the most experience. People have told me I'm an expert. I'm going, no, I don't know enough to be an expert. Am I what I would consider a specialist? Absolutely. But that I've heard tell, there is somewhere in excess of 2,500 member races of the Galactic Consortium. Okay. So, I mean, from my standpoint, the consortium is huge, and rest assured, the one I've got some of the ones. Do I have? Don't know if I've actually got one here. Got a bunch of different pictures here. Like, people say, why don't these guys reveal themselves? Well, here's a neat thought for you. I showed an earlier picture of the smaller version. Okay, but humans get edgy when you look at somebody that's a different skin color. Okay, these guys are an actual race that is that I've run into on this planet. Okay, these guys are in excess of 7 feet tall. Now, can you picture what you would feel if you're worried about skin color, you're worried about somebody that's a little taller than you are? Okay, picture seeing somebody that size. And if you take a look at his hands, they're not exactly the ones you want somebody shaking your hand with. Okay. The funny part about it is, you take a look, even if you look at their shoes, you take a look at their boots. Yes, they are boots, but they're form fitted. Okay, much like a human has a heel on their boot, that is the actual heel on these guys. Now, can you picture what would happen? Hate to tell you this, Clout, but that's not a Draco, although they are descended from them. This is a chameleon. Okay, centuries back. Okay, way back. Actually, millennia, probably eons ago. Anyway, the draconic race had expanded way too far, way too quickly. Okay, and because of that, they ran into some complications, and they left some of their outlying communities. What turned out to be the chameleon, the tormor, the tormor. And if we could say that word, that the Tormenon and the Strazazian are three races all directly genetically tied to the Draconians, to the Drakes. Okay. They were left behind. They evolved on their own path. Okay. But the chameleons are only around the 7 foot mark, 7.5 foot mark, as are the Tormenon. Okay. The Strazazians are somewhere between 7.5 and 8.5 feet tall. They're slightly bigger. Okay. That would not be a surprise. Now, is that... I can't make that out. That's terrible. Looks like it says Cikar. Ciakar. I will have to double check that. Not double check it as in I don't believe you. Okay. So much as take a look at it and just talk to them and find out, because frankly, I haven't actually asked them. Mind you, they're a grumpy batch a lot of the time. But that would not be a shock. Okay. The neat part about it, okay, when you're dealing with this, many people know different races by different names. This is the same on Earth, where some people know one nationality as a different race, as a different nationality. Well, that's always nice to know. Thank you so much for that extra information there, Cloud. Denali, how you doing? I believe so. If I remember correctly, Draconis is in the Andromedan strain, is in the Andromedan galaxy. Okay, the actual planet Draconis, which is where they come from. Okay, yeah, quite frankly, by the feel of it there, Denali, that would be the same people. Okay, but I will tell you, the one problem I run into with the Drakes is the fact that they have a tendency of turning around and they will literally look down on people. It's not that they want to rule everybody. Okay, it's that they simply desire to rule whatever's there. They just don't like answering to people. And yeah, they absolutely do. I mean, you want to see somebody that are a bit narcissistic, that'd be them. I'm sure they wrote the book on it, as the saying goes. So I mean, we're looking at races that are, and many of these races, okay, when you look at the races of the worlds, those books, turns out, and it was quite an accidental involvement, but I'd already written a chunk of the Yldrbacian Chronicles when I got around to writing the races of the worlds. It was literally thanks to Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio and the audience there that I ended up writing the races of the worlds in the first place, because so many people were asking the same questions that I figured enough is enough. best to put it on paper. So I did. But what I discovered as I was doing that was many of the races that I'd already written into the storyline for the Yldrbac Chronicles dictated their emotional interaction, their social interaction with different people. Okay, so the races of the world boils down to a reference manual. The races in the Yldrbac Chronicles, you get to see more of their actual attitude. Okay, their actual social interaction. This is another reason why I say everything is connected. Most of what I do can all be tied into one loop. I've got those books. I've got another subsidiary book to those, which will be Jeremiah's journal, but it won't come out until after the final of the saga is written. Okay. I'm looking for a storyline that I had written that actually puts Jeremiah Wollstrong, the lead character, the lead protagonist in the Yldrbac Chronicles, puts him on a spaceship. Okay, I've got that written somewhere, and I just have to find it again. Absolutely, YJ. The reality is you can turn the light on for anybody, but you cannot force them to see it. Absolutely, Clout. I actually got lost when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I got lost in the woods. We'd gone camping, and I get lost very easily. So I'm walking along. At that time I was in tears because I was just completely lost. And this little Bigfoot come out to me. Okay. I'm going to tell you, come back to that in a second, Denali. He was, I guess, I was only 7, so he was probably 5.5, 6 feet tall. I had to look up to him. But I kid you not, his hands were humongous. Right, now there's a neat word. So he found me, and I'm in tears. He takes me by the hand, really, really soft, supple hands. Takes me by the hand, leads me back to where his parents were sitting. Of course, I'm still in tears. So the mother did what she could to help us feel a lot, to help us, to help me calm down. Got me calmed down. Okay. Once they got me calmed down, the father asked where I was, and I could not tell him where I'd come from. All I could tell him, I could describe the camper that we were in. All I could describe was the camper I was in. What it was a 5-ton truck, right? It was a cube van that Daddy camperized. So I drew this out on the dirt, and the father picks me up. Well, he takes my hand and leads me back to the camper. He didn't pick me up and carry me. He just led me back to the camper, to the edge of the campsite, and made sure it was my camper. And then he just kind of edged me forward into the clearing, at which point I ran up and got back together with Dad. I reconnected with the family. But they are a very, very gentle, very caring race. Yes, they have a bizarre scent to them. But if you grow up on a farm, it's really not that bad. The smell, I mean. But on my dad's deathbed, he told me flat out that those memories were absolutely real. Okay. Now, I did mention Denali that I'd get back to that. The statement is usually you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And I'm telling you that's overstated. You can absolutely lead a horse to water, but you can force it to drink. I will warn you though, you will be some wet. Because what you got to do is you got to knock the thing off balance, get it laid down, and force its head underwater. Hold it down until it takes a gulp or two and let the head up. You have now forced it to drink. But you will be absolutely soaked. Okay. But as with everything, there is a reason for the saying. I mean, basically it boils down to, it's really hard to get it to happen. I got asked one day by somebody, they said, can you do this job for me? I said, I'm a little busy. And he goes, it's just as easy as taking candy from a baby. I looked at the guy and I went, fine, you do it. Right. If you've ever tried taking candy from a baby, there is a problem. And that is very true. They will not drink water. They will not drink water voluntarily if it's bad. And honestly, if you see a horse that's refusing water, it would be advisable not to drink it. Okay. Now, it has been wonderful having you all here. Absolutely thrilled at the numbers. Looks like we've got, I don't know what the total number is going to be, but it looks like we've got 14 in the room right now, which I'm absolutely tickled pink by. Thanks so much for joining me. I've loved the questions. Okay. I will be back again next week, next Saturday. I'm working on a couple of ideas. I have no idea what the topic's going to be about, but I will be looking into the description of what people have known as far as the Hathors are concerned. Okay. And absolutely, Clout, I'm going to go and talk to this is the first actual name, because usually I don't bother asking people what their species is. Some of these jumping Jiminy. Well, that startled me, in case you couldn't tell. Horn outside. Anyway, I will absolutely look into that. Okay. And once I've got that, again, sometimes it's a question of piecing two and two together. But I will be back again. I'll be back sometime today. I will be doing another edition of the journey. Okay. Yeah, no, Hathor, I realized what it was I haven't talked to Chris in literally almost a decade. I met him when I was out at Experiencer Speak. But I could get carried away here really quick. So I will catch up with you again. Again, absolutely, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, there's a neat little button down in the bottom of the screen there that'll put you right in link to let you know when the next ones come out. I have been considering taking the Yldrbac Chronicles and just simply reading small excerpts out of them to give people an idea what that story is like. Okay. Again, I'm kind of learning as I go. Well, no, I'm definitely learning as I go as to how to go about marketing. Because the best books in the world, the best tools in the world are absolutely useless if nobody can find them. Okay. But the answer to the question as to where you can get them, look at the list below this video and below any of the other videos, pretty much. You'll find a list of different books that I've got in print in my possession. The Yldrbac Chronicles, both The Birth of the Wolfpack and The End of an Epoch, are available on authorhouse.com, on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, on Chapters, on Indigo, and probably a number of other places, of course, directly through me as well. Anyway, I will let you go. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.